Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to our dear listeners of IKIM FM. Welcome to this special interview. I'm your host Badrisha Afrina. Alhamdulillah, thank you very much for listening to us from wherever you are. Either you are listening to this through radio or even through our social media pages, Facebook and YouTube. So, in this episode of special interview, we would like to talk about the recent election of the US presidential, and as we know that the results came out with Trump's winning for his second term, coming back for his second term to the office. So right now, as being the president of, I would say, and influential, the most, if not the most influential country in the world, of course, any type of policy will have impact towards other country. And here, of course, when we're talking about Trump, he is known for his immigration plan and also his certain stance in certain issues. But the thing that we are concerned about is his foreign policy, especially for the Middle Eastern countries. And to talk about it, I have here with me in the studio is Dr. Abdul Latiff Muhammad Ibrahim, who is the head of research and publications at International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies Malaysia, IAIS. Assalamualaikum, Doctor, and welcome to the studio.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you also for your time here with us today, Doctor. It is such a pleasure. So, Doctor, as I explained just now in my introduction about the current or the recent election, the US presidential, we know that Trump won. So, and of course, as we know, Trump is known for his unpredictable decision. So now, as I mentioned in the introduction, we would like to know about his policy, foreign policy, specific for the Middle Eastern countries. So as for now, we know that some prominent issues that are happening right now, of course, the genocide, the Palestinians' genocide, and then the war with Iran and also with Lebanon. So there are a lot of uncertainties, and of course, I'm sure things are happening in Middle Eastern region is one of his, I would say, the main issues that Trump's focus on, apart of trying to make America great again. Well, that one we can talk more on later. So as an introduction for this interview, can you share with us about what might Trump policies in the Middle Eastern look like, especially for his second term? If you look at in his first term, I would say he imposed quite an aggressive policy. So do you think that this time he might do the same thing or maybe something different?
Thank you for your question. But before we go into the details of what his Middle East policy would be like, I think it is important also to understand that there is a leadership now coming in again, Trump 2.0, which is not wavering from the main agenda or the ideological base of the Republican Party, that is to focus on domestic issues first.
Domestic issue first.
I think Trump is going to be, Trump's main focus will still be domestic. And he will be more focused on cleaning up, as he has always been saying. You know, he's very good for slogans. So he say clean up the system, and he doesn't want, especially the immigration policy.
Yeah.
That is a big agenda in his coming administration. I was just hearing the news. He has appointed the minister, or let's say in the context of America, they call it Secretary of Homeland Affairs, a well-known person who is strictly against immigrants, and what we hear is even to the extent that he might, quoting his vice president. Vance, who did say that if possible, we may even use the National Guard to remove all the undocumented. But it's a very messy thing, of course, because most of these immigrants are already have already been in the United States for quite some time.
Yes.
And they have intermarried with American citizens. They have children. It's going to be a very messy thing. But that is the issue that they are going to focus on. So foreign policy, it looks like Trump doesn't want to have situations like Americans getting or let's say American money being spent for other people's wars. He did that in his first term. He's already threatened during his campaign that he'll cut off NATO funding. He will cut off aid to no more with Ukraine. You have to fend for yourself. America is not going to finance the wars of other countries and things like that. So on that note, it seems on the surface that would this thing apply also in the Middle East context. But of course, there's another aspect to this whole thing that we must understand. You can talk about the President of the United States, okay, and you have his administration. But what is his administration? He's not alone. He's got his circle around him, his ministers, and his advisors and all that kind of thing. Now, it is no secret. It is no secret for decades and decades, that the American administrations, whether Republican or Democrat, they have always been dominated and heavily influenced by Zionist advisors and Zionist influence. There's a lot of Zionist influence in the administration. And that actually explains why there's always, from long time ago, that there's that special relationship between the U.S. and Israel.
Yes.
So, in that context, but taking off from his some of his statements during the campaign, Trump did mention that he wants Netanyahu to wrap it up or finish it off before he comes to office on January 20th.
Yes.
Which means that he doesn't want a war after January 20th. So he wants the thing to stop. More or less, that is what he wants to see.
Does it mean like ceasefire, or it's more to like completely stop?
I don't know whether it's going to be a ceasefire, because ceasefire would, of course, if we are talking about a ceasefire, it should have happened a long time ago, because this year, earlier part of this year, there was already a UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire, which Israel totally ignored, as it has been doing for all the other resolutions regarding the Palestinian issue. So, nothing to hope for on that side. But he wants to see an end to the war, because perhaps that's how he wants to appease to the Arab and the Muslim communities, because we must not forget that among the swing states, some of these had Muslim,
like
a sizable Muslim vote. For example, Michigan.
Yes.
Michigan is, of course, a huge Muslim vote, and they totally back Trump this time around. In fact, Trump swept all the swing states. So you can see how this thing happened. And, well, if he were to take that into consideration, then he would have to resolve the war. At least the war. We are not talking about the Middle East problem being solved. No. Stopping the war does not mean the problem is solved. No. It is only stopping the war, stopping the genocide. Because the genocide is ongoing at the moment. Stopping it means just stop the war. But this solution has not been found. Okay? So, the next question that we should ask is, is that just stopping the war or going for a solution? Now, this is a big issue that we should be looking into. What would be the solution? So I would put it as of now. That's my response to your question.
And that's very interesting. Listen to that. Can I just want to touch a bit on, as you mentioned, the Michigan just now. That of course we know that they have a quite prominent number of Muslim or Arab Americans community there, and if you look at it, as you mentioned, that Trump won at most, or if not all, the swing states, right? So this shows that the Arab American, the Muslim Americans show their support towards Trump, which is for me is quite weird because knowing that Trump is quite prominent supporter of Israel. Even Benjamin Netanyahu even admitted that Trump is one of the most pro-Israeli president that U.S. ever had. So what is your thought on that? Why do these Muslim Americans, why do they support Donald Trump, even though knowing the fact that, as Trump mentioned in his campaign, that he will allow everything Israel, he will allow everything Israel to do to finish the war. So what is your thought on that?
Before that, I would like to draw your attention to the what I should say is the Israeli view. All right. Now, as you were mentioning just now, the Israelis were in euphoria. They were so happy that Trump won.
Yes.
These things. Now, there is a reason behind it because during the post October 7, of course, Biden was in charge. So, at times, while Biden had actually there were no limits to American aid for Israel, military aid. He was just supplying the Israelis with everything they needed. It was like my go down, my military go down is open. Come, just take it as you wish. And it was just flowing out of the all the stores in America, straight shipped to Israel. It was so free flow. But at times, Biden used to, maybe he used to reprimand Netanyahu, or he made statements that there's a red line. I remember him saying that when the Israeli forces were going to attack Rafah, he said, Rafah is a red line. But of course, that nothing happened. It is just a paper tiger kind of thing. Nothing concrete or serious about that. But that statement too, of course, it irked the Israeli leadership, and Netanyahu was upset. He in fact said that he will not visit Washington. He was, and to appease his, or rather to calm his anger. Later on, they patched it up and invited him to the Congress. Later on, we know about that, and he made a speech in the U.S. Congress.
Yes.
Now, the thing is, for the Israelis, they find that the Democrat leadership, if had it been Kamala Harris, there could be imposition of certain things which
there will be restriction.
A bit of restriction, and there would be some friction. Not to say that Israel will be abandoned. Never. That's not going to happen, because America is the other way around. Israel is always controlling what the Americans are supposed to do. So I think in that context, they felt that Trump would be a better one based on his first administration. For example, there's one very significant action taken by Trump in the first administration is to shift the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Yes.
Now, against international law, because under international law, Jerusalem is not East Jerusalem, particularly is occupied territory, and it must be returned to the Palestinians.
Yes.
So this, in defiance of even international law.
Yes.
But of course, the international community, whatever it may mean, has not been able to, stop that action. All right, but he stopped at that. He didn't go further, but he was having the other initiatives for so-called peace in the Middle East. So perhaps this time around, they felt that he would uh, he would agree to Israeli plans for the occupied territories and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But of course, uh, his Trump's words during the campaign, wrap it up, finish it once and for all, meaning that there's no war. So there's not going to be any war. So if there is no war, then it means that there must be a solution. There must be some kind of a solution that he has to work out. Now, this raises the question of what about the neighboring countries? What about the Arab countries? And what about the his own domestic Arab Muslim population, as you were mentioning, who was supporting him in this election?
Yes.
Now, does he not have an obligation to also balance his actions so that it also looks into some kind of a solution? So we just do not know what solution he will put forth from his side. But given the fact, like I was saying at the earlier part of this interview, that who controls policy, who controls the main things that happen in Washington? It's the Zionist influence, and of course it is very strong. So the possibility of shifting, I mean, being biased towards Israel is always there, and it will. To me, I think that's going to continue. There's not going to be any anything less in that. But I feel that for the Palestinians, that they have maybe another kind of thinking, which I think we can discuss later.
Of course, here you're giving me, I would say, some hope, or also some, optimism that we can look upon his possible next policy, because you mentioned that about the possibility of him giving focus on the American citizens first compared to Israeli. If you look at the current administration, the Biden administration, under him, they have been spending billions of dollars for Israel, in which, for me, as from other country, as a third world country, I would think that he could have just spent that money for his citizens itself, of course, but it is his decision. But then going further into that, as you mentioned about that, it gives some hope. Perhaps Trump may do better than Biden's administration, because if you look at his first term, his track record, for example, like in 2017, he had a peace agreement with North Korea, and he also avoided war with Iran. So perhaps it is always not on the bad weather. So what is your thought on that?
As I was saying earlier, I think in the show, his focus, of course, is domestic. And he wants to spend the money. American money should be spent for Americans, basically. But of course, not. It's not going to be something like then what is America's role in the world? I mean, it has got to also look into other countries, other regions, but the main, I think, where perhaps the previous administrations, particularly the current one, which is going to finish its term, spent a lot. I mean, you will America has been termed as a country involved in unending wars.
Unending wars.
If you go back to the history of modern history of America, right from after the Second World War, America has been constantly engaged in overseas wars.
Yes.
And it became worse, particularly following 9/11. And you could see attacking of Iraq, and then you come to twice, okay, and then you have Afghanistan, you have Libya, you have Syria, Yemen, everywhere. So a constant, it's like a culture already.
Yeah.
If you talk about a culture of war, now this is a country which has made war a culture, and it practices it on the world stage.
Yeah.
But with Trump, maybe, it's not to say that there wouldn't be, but on a very much reduced scale.
So it's not just his interests.
Because he doesn't want, I think on that point, sometimes we have to agree, I mean, even we as Malaysians also, we would expect that Malaysian money is spent for Malaysians.
Yes.
I mean, our money spent for our own interests. So the same thing, I think if he's using it for his citizens, that's a good thing. And that's why he doesn't want to, Ukraine-Russia war to end. I mean, it will end. I think he can resolve it. Because right now, the war is going on because of Western funding for Ukraine.
Yes.
The moment there's no more funding for Ukraine, especially from America, which is the biggest supplier of everything under the sun for Ukraine, so I think Ukraine will have to go into a peace deal with the Russians. And don't forget that Trump has a line to Putin. And they have, it's not a special relationship, but he looks at that relationship in a strategic way. I think on that point, even with North Korea, as you were mentioning earlier, he looks at all these spots in a strategic way. Because why? Why pick a fight with all these countries just because they are different ideologically and things like that? Because it means spending American money, so that he doesn't want. And that is why I think if he keeps on that track, and he manages to have his way without being influenced by what I was saying earlier, the circle around him, to change his policies, then I think we will find a calmer world. The world will be a slightly calmer, less wars and things like that, toning down. Because if his concentration is America, make America great again, MAGA. so he's focused on that. So I think that's something positive in that. But when it comes to the Middle East, again, as I was saying earlier, it might be something different. Of course, he wants a solution. He will go for a solution. He will propose solutions to resolve the thing, because again, money being spent, a lot of money, American money being spent.
Yeah.
So reducing it is a very important thing for the new administration that is going to come in. So in that sense, I think, but we do not know what would he do. But in his first term, he came up with the Abraham Accords.
Yes.
Which of course meant that he would rope in those other Arab countries and Muslim countries which still did not recognize Israel. So he wanted them to as a means to
normalize
resolve what he called it. I mean, what the press and the media and the way they term it as normalizing, because that's not. I don't know how recognizing Israel can be considered a normal thing. To me, it's the most abnormal thing to do. But it would be better to call it just call it what it is. That is having diplomatic relations with Israel. Done. It's not something normal, because it is not normal in the context of justice.
Yes.
It is and the oppression and the injustice meted out to the Palestinians since more than 75 years ago cannot be considered. You cannot say that you normalize things by accepting the occupier as a valid legal entity. I mean that's not acceptable. So in that context, I think we do not know whether he will keep on to the Abraham Accords model, or he'll come up with a new plan for the Middle East. But whatever it is, like I was saying, that for the Palestinians, I would like to now look at the Palestinians themselves.
Yeah.
Now the Palestinians, for them, it doesn't matter who is in office in America, whether it's from the Republicans or whether it's from the Democrats, whether it's Trump or it is Harris, whoever it may be, their condition remains the same. Because in the context of Palestine versus Israel, the situation remains the same. As long it is the most important thing is to understand this Israeli Zionist regime. Now the Zionist regime is a Zionist regime.
Yeah.
So a Zion is driven by the ideology of Zionism. And right now you have the most extremist regime that you could ever think in the history of Israel. Because they have the worst, the likes of Netanyahu himself is an extremist.
Yes.
Although he's in the narrative which you read in the media as if he is okay, but the extremists are only Ben Gvir and Smotrich. No, he is in the same camp. Only thing he's in a different party. That's all. They think the same. They have the same plans. They have the same objectives. So the thing now that what we are looking at is this is the situation, and for the Palestinians, this conflict, this issue will continue until there's justice. For me, until there's justice for all. I'm not just talking about for the Palestinians, also for the Jews. But that justice will only come if at this point of time now the Palestinian issue is resolved. That they get their land, that they get their state, that they get what they should rightly get as per what has been established. Other than that, there's not going to be justice.
Dear listeners, that brings us to the end of the first part of our interview with Dr. Abdul Latiff Muhammad Ibrahim, the Head of Research and Publications at the International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies Malaysia, IAIS, on the topic Trump's return, rethinking US policy in a changing Middle Eastern landscape. Thank you very much for listening to us. If you have any questions or would like to share your thoughts onto this topic, feel free to leave them in the comment section of this airing on Facebook or YouTube, or you can send us a message on WhatsApp at 011-29004-004. So be sure to tune in to us next week for the second part of this interview. Stay tuned to IKIM FM, inspirasi utama anda.